isn't to live forever. The goal is to create something that will.
Welcome to Perspective, a podcast for wedding craves, where we sit down with a special guest and talk about our many years of experience in the wedding industry so that you can learn from us and grow your wedding business. Hello, I'm Simon.
I'm Greg.
Together, we are Cinemate Films, two Scottish-based wedding filmmakers who love nothing more than drinking coffee and talking shop with others in the wedding industry. And we've teamed up with Photography Farm to bring you 6 special episodes of this podcast in anticipation of Thrive Edinburgh 2025, happening on the 4th and 5th of March at the Yotel Imaginex. Greg, who are we talking to today?
We are talking to Sophie Berard. Hello, Sophie. How are you doing?
Hello.
Good. How are you guys?
Very well. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where are you broadcasting from?
I'm broadcasting from Paris, France right now.
Okay. Because you mentioned that people speak really fast in France. Or where you were. And I'm like, yeah. Could she be in Canada? Could she be like...
Yeah. No, we're in Paris and it's a different language out here for sure.
Yes. Are you there for a wedding or what brings you over there?
No, I live here right now. So I'm mostly between Paris and America. My jobs are mostly international at this point. Mm-hmm. But this is the place that I'm trying to make my residence. We'll see how it goes.
Cool. Yeah. You're just scared to go back?
I mean, yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think it would be a little crazy to go back over there right now, but...
Yes, it's a bit crazy right now. But yeah, well, thank you again for joining us. Do you want to let's just start the podcast off by having you introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do?
My name is Sophie Berard, and I am a photographer. At this point in my career, I'm mostly focusing on weddings. So it's been interesting to see that career shift go that way whenever I started out in commercial and more editorial work. Mm-hmm. I never thought I would end up on a podcast talking about a wedding photography business.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no.
Okay. So what took you in the wedding direction then?
Oh, man. I think living in a small town, I'm originally from Lafayette, Louisiana, and it being so small, people know what you do. And so I had a few friends ask me to shoot their weddings, and I was like, sure, why not? And I think after the first wedding I photographed, I was like, I'm never doing this again. That was crazy. I didn't know my gear. I didn't know my lighting. But at the time, I was doing commercial photography for a boutique called Sneaker Politics. Mm-hmm. And so I just stayed with them. I kept getting better. And then a few years later, someone else asked me to photograph their wedding. And I was like, you know what? I feel really good about lighting. I feel good working in the studio. I feel better working around people. And I gave it another shot. And I think I left that wedding just being like, wow, that was amazing. Those people loved really well. And I feel like I have just been, I don't know, like just like the way that love makes you feel whenever it's real, it stays with you. And after that, I was like, maybe I could do this more.
Yeah. I mean, you said you'd been photographing commercially already and you were being a paid photographer, but what was it about that first wedding that made you think you didn't have your lighting down and it was chaotic and stuff? What scared you about that first one?
Well, I think in a studio setting, you can always adjust light how you need. But when I was doing the commercial job at first, I think I was one of those kids that was just faking it till they made it, right? And I think it was my first job where I was like, man, like there's so much going on with these cameras still and the light. And I think in a wedding, what's happening is that you're going from so many different lighting situations. You could be outside, you could be in another room, or the lights are, I don't know, bright enough to be able to push your ISO high enough. And then you can go in another space where things are happening fast, but it's too dark. And so now you need to change your settings completely to accommodate a flash setting.
Yeah.
And then it's like you only have a few seconds in between these moments changing to really get with it. So I think that was the part of a wedding where I was like, whoa, this really requires you to know what you're doing. You have no time to think.
Mm-hmm. Man,
Yeah.
just you telling me that story, I feel like I'm stressed. I'm stressed hearing that. You've only got a few seconds to change it. I know all this information.
Been doing it for years.
I've been doing it for 15 years.
So how long ago was that? Like, when did you first start getting into weddings, and what's that journey looked like?
Oh man, I think my first job was either at the age of 18 or 19. And for weddings, and I think I was paid $500 for it, something crazy like that. But you know what? There's nothing more valuable than being able to learn. And I think that I'm always glad that I took opportunities at a younger age for a lot less, so that, you know, there was less pressure in that space of learning. I think it's different for everyone. There are some people that are super established that then come into the wedding sphere and are just, you know, 15, 20K off the bat. And I'm like, good for you. That's awesome. You deserve it. You know, you know what you're doing. But for me, it was a very long road getting to a place where I had a sustainable business. And that's still continuing as my business continues to grow. I quit my full-time job doing product photography when I think I was 22 or 23. It was February 14th. So in just a few days. And I remember before I did that, though, I was talking to a local photographer, Paul Q. And I was like, Paul, how did you go freelance? Because when you're from a small town, like, working for yourself doesn't seem like a possibility.
Yeah.
And I remember him telling me that I just made a financial goal. You know, I made it a goal to save $20,000 and make sure that I had like work coming in that was booked and ready for the upcoming year. And if I didn't book work for, say, 3 or 6 months, that I had that in the bank. And so I listened to him, I started saving my money. And as soon as I hit that $20,000 savings in my bank account, and of course had clients coming in, that's when I quit my job. And I have been freelance since. I think a big part of my growth with the types of jobs I've been getting, though, started whenever I left New Orleans. Because after my job at Politics, we moved to New Orleans and I worked at that branch for a little while. And then after living in New Orleans for a few years, I moved out to the Bay Area in California right before the pandemic hit. So that was a fun time to transition to business.
Yes. What were the major road bumps there?
I mean, so when I lived in New Orleans, I didn't know how big the industry was. Like, I didn't know that photographers charged $20,000 for weddings. I didn't know that was a thing. In Louisiana, I think the max some of the top photographers were charging was $8,000. And I was like, whoa, that's a lot of money. Holy cow. And it is, especially like in Europe. That's pretty standard over here. But America, the sky is the limits, right? And so when I moved to the Bay Area, I was like, man, maybe I should reach out to some planners here. I've never done that before, but I went on Vogue.com. I went on their best of wedding planners list, and I went through all the planners that I love to look at. And I was like, man, they do cool design. I'd love to photograph that. So I think I reached out to like maybe 4 or 5 planners on this Vogue list.
Yeah.
And a few weeks later, I heard back from 2 different planners. And one of those planners was Candace Ettinger. And she just reached out. She had just left Allison Events at the time, which is a pretty big wedding planning company in America that I didn't know who they were. I didn't know. I was like, who are these people? But now I know. And I met with Candace. She needed new headshots. And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, I'd love to do your headshots. Like, I'm happy to be of service to you. Like, it's good for you to see how I work and who I am, because if you're ever going to introduce me to your clients, you're going to want to make sure you like me as a person, hopefully, and also like my work. And then after that, we really hit it off, and we did a styled shoot in Northern California, which I don't really fully always believe in styled shoots unless it is one-on-one with a planner, unless you're cultivating a relationship, unless it's like serving a greater purpose beyond just portfolio building, right? Because having a bunch of people with the same photos in their portfolio is never conducive to, I don't know, standing out. So after that job with Candace, she referred me to a job in, I think it was Hawaii. And then after that, she referred me to some of her friends in the Bay Area, one of them being Jesse Toombs. And Jesse at the time was also at Allison Events and left. And he's just like this, I mean, he's just so talented with his design. And I remember Candace telling me, she was like, yeah, like you should work with Jesse. He's really great. It would be good for you to connect with him. And I was like, all right, cool. So I think I worked with Jesse on a job. I think I was maybe charging $5,000 or $6,000 at the time because I didn't know what to charge in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
And I had a job with Jesse, and I just kept working with these people. Little did I know that like every planner in the industry is looking at Jesse because he just left Allison Events as like the creative director, right?
Uh-huh.
And so I think working with him and then receiving the Rangefinder 30 Rising Stars Award the year prior just kind of created this snowball effect of my work getting out there and having the opportunity to work with more design focused events.
Yeah. A lot of people have this not a negative view on awards, but see them as just an accolade to bolster our egos. But did it have any, I mean, it sounded like it had an actual practical tool for you.
Totally.
Practical aspect to it.
I think what was intriguing about the Rangefinder 30 Rising Star accolade for me was that it had to come from people who had already won it in the industry. Yeah. So it had to come from people that, you know, were looking at you, were paying attention to your work, who had previously won it. And then you were also going up against 600 other people in the world who had been nominated for it, all who are incredible. Yeah. And then just showing 30 of your best photos that you think displays what your voice is. I think if I were to look back on my submission now, I'd probably be like, oh man, that's crazy. My work has changed so much. But I think what you do with those accolades is a lot more important than what they actually represent, because it's just kind of like it's just a starting point. Like you can win it and then it can be like, okay, well, what else? Like, what else is there? What else do I do? How do I keep moving forward? Yeah. But I think the focus needs to always continue to be on like why you're doing it and just continuing to improve in your craft. So yeah, I mean, the Vogue stuff and like publications and paid things and all that kind of stuff, I'm very much with you. But I do think Rangefinder is probably one of the few where I'm like, all right, like I could see it. I could see that, you know, being important to someone.
Yeah, absolutely.
With like amongst the industry, it's definitely got some clout because of the peers choosing it. Like it definitely has something to it. Yeah.
I've never, that's so interesting that you're saying that, because we've spoken to so many people who are like, I've won this award, and so now that I've kind of conquered the industry, I'm now going to move on. And it's like, I've never really thought about it in the way that you're saying it, just because it's very rarely, because we ask so many people, like, is it useful to you? Have you found any benefit to business? And they always say no. Yeah, every single person.
But that probably falls on them for not taking the steps to push on from there and be like, right, now can I do something with this exposure to better serve my clients or something?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, let's stick on this topic then. Since it is so prevalent that people just want to give up after they've won an award, or they don't find any use for it in their business. So you're a photographer out there, you've won this award. Then what would you tell them to do next? What's some advice for them?
I mean, it's tough because as you're saying all this, I'm like, I wonder if the only reason my career started propelling forward was because I was also connecting with these planners at the same time. I do explicitly remember, though, after Rangefinder, that award dropped, I was getting inquiries from planners I had never heard of that weren't connected to these planners. So I do think it can add to it, but I think what planners are looking for, and I know you're asking what can photographers do, but it's like, I guess it depends on how they want to move forward and what moving forward looks like to them. If it's just that you're receiving an accolade, okay, you did it. But if your intention is to work with planners, I would say reach out to them, include it in the fact that, I mean, it's your CV. They want to see your accomplishments. They want to see full portfolios. They want to see how you can bring your service to them and also highlight the work that they've been doing for their client for the last year. I think that's where a lot of photographers fall off, is they want to service their couples, but they forget too that there are a lot of other vendors involved that are putting a lot of work into this event. And I think more than anything, to move forward in this industry, it's so important that you are able to shoot all aspects of the day with a different hat for each part. So
yeah. Going back to like the first 4 planners that you said you reached out to, that was obviously like a cold reach out, or I assume it was a cold reach out, because you said you just found them online, sent them a message or whatever. People will be wondering, like, what did you, if you can remember, roughly what did you say to try and get them to respond and actually take notice of you? Because these sort of level of planners are probably getting cold calls, cold messages from multiple people. So what can someone do to make themselves stand out a bit more?
Yeah, I think it's funny, I talk about this with my planner friends now, because a lot of planners get DMs and voice memos and like repeated emails from people they don't know all the time just because they want to work with them. And one, I think how we go about it matters. Don't slide into someone's DMs. Just don't do it. Write an email.
Write an email.
Yeah, I know some photographers that send like gifts to planners they've never worked with, which for me seems a little much. But whenever I first wrote that email, I think it was a copy paste situation. I was just going down the list because I don't want to work with all of them, whatever. And so I think it was one, I was offering my services, right? I wasn't expecting a wedding. I wasn't asking to be pushed towards one of their major jobs. I know that's a big deal. We need to establish trust first. And I wasn't asking for coffee because I'm a stranger. They don't want to hang out with me. Like, their time is so limited already. But I was saying, hey, if you have a family, if you need new headshots for your team, if there are photo services that you require and I can be of service, like, I would love for the opportunity to give that to you and to also meet you. But before that, I think I prefaced it with my experience. I do have experience as a product photographer, and I think that is very intriguing to planners. They want to know that someone's going to take care of photographing their product and delivering photos that are of interest to them. I had previously worked with Kristen Marie Parker as her second shooter a few times. And I name dropped her. I was like, here's her information. Like, you could reach out to her. If you need, I don't know, whatever, a testament or testimony around what it's like working with me. And I think I also dropped this planner that I worked with in New Orleans. That's no longer a company together, Clark and Kelly, I think it was. But yeah, I was just like, this is what I've done, and here are some full galleries, and I'd love to, be considered. And I remember asking Candace, I was like, why did you reach back out to me? Like, what was that about? And she said, your work just stood out. Like, you had a unique sense of the way you saw the world. I loved the way you edited things. I loved the way you captured decor. And I think that's ultimately, like, if I reached out and offered all these things and had terrible work, she would have responded to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. So is this something that you continually do for them?
Yeah.
You make sure that you are like, I know this is your wedding, or your client's wedding, rather. Your client's wedding, I'm going to make sure that you are taken care of. And that's like a relationship that you are constantly looking to help.
I think it's when it's a planner I typically work with, or a high production job where I know that the client has spent a lot of time on decor. If that's something that the client's like, this is our design board, and they send me like a full page, multi-day mood board of all the different events they have going on. Then yes, design is always a conversation I am having, not just with the couple, but also with the planner. And if I see that we don't have enough time, so like if, I don't know, we have overlap between cocktail hour and reception decor, I'm always going to make the client's cocktail hour and that time a priority. Like people come first. So if they want decor photographed, if the planner wants decor photographed, either we're bringing on another photographer, extending the timeline, adjusting things. But that conversation's always had, because at this point, I'm just like, yeah, they want decor photos. I've had planners pay for the second to come on because the client didn't want to pay for the second, but they still wanted their decor photo. So I was like, okay, like we can make that happen. But it is definitely something, when planners get me these jobs, they're doing it because they know I'm going to take care of them. Yeah. They do it because they know I can take care of them and the client as well. So they're getting a very, I think, how do you say that? Well-rounded. There we go. They're getting a well-rounded product where they have images where they can show their work. Because at the end of the day, like that's all these vendors and these planners have. So, and I think also if clients are spending, I just had a crazy job this past summer. One of Bon Jovi's kids got married, and there were like names on the golf balls. There were names on the tennis rackets. There were custom this, that, chopsticks, left, right. Like the list of everything that was customized was forever long. And yeah, they wanted it all photographed. So like, and they spent so much time thinking and considering those things. So I want to photograph it in an artful way. You know, never are we doing lay flats where it's like, okay, now we're going to make this look cool. I want to photograph this decor and like those types of elements in their natural environment so that it reads well.
Yeah. Yeah. When you mentioned there, that wedding, is there any, I'm thinking about a conversation about privacy in my mind that many photographers have an issue with. What's your mindset on a couple's privacy with weddings? Because over here in the UK, by law, what is it? What is the law? It's not NCPR, is it? The privacy law?
I don't know.
You don't. Okay. By law, like we can't share certain information about couples, and if they want their wedding to be private, we can't post them by law. Are
you forced to take the job then?
Say that again.
Are you forced to take the job, or
we're not forced to take the job. But I know in the States that there's quite often the added privacy, like you can add that extra on and we won't post it. That sort of thing. What's your mindset with that? All that.
It's so funny you're asking me this, because I was just drafting up an email earlier today where I have a client who is getting married this year, but my books are technically fully closed for 2025. I'm really not trying to take on any more work unless it's a job that I'm excited about, design-wise, location-wise, planner-wise, and couple-wise.
Yep.
But yeah, they wanted they're asking about privacy for their photos, and I think I have a few different clauses in my contract, because at the end of the day, I want to be as flexible with these clients as possible. Like, these are their photos and there's a lot of sensitive stuff that's in there. I have a few different things that I lean into. I offer 30% of their online gallery that they can hide. We won't share those. I want to give them that option, which if you're dealing with, I don't know, 1,200 photos, that's what, like 360 images they can take offline.
Mm-hmm.
And then compare that with the portion that is atmospheric or decor or just these other shots. Like that is a pretty large portion of images.
Yeah.
So I give them that option. If they wanted to go into publication per se, then it's like we'll only publish and share what has gone into publication. But if they do request to keep all of their photos offline, I do incur a privacy fee, just because at this point I'm not taking on as much work.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not able to share my most current work or from a location that I'm excited to shoot, or if I have to lock these photos up and I can't share that, that's how we make our income. That's how we book our jobs. And you get couples to be like, "Hi, I really love this photo you took of my Aunt Sue and Uncle John." And, you know, like we connect not to the photos of decor, but to the photos of humans being humans. So
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. In the UK, data protection is governed by... Oh, no, I still can't find the name of it. What the hell? I thought I had it right there. What the hell's wrong with me? Oh, never mind. We're not here to that. Yeah, because I do remember being at work at one time, and one of the American photographers were like, "Oh yeah, they can pay me if they want their privacy." And I just thought, oh, I felt so icky at the time.
Yeah.
It's really icky.
But it is like, that is how, if we're not able to share the films or photos that we create for these people, other people are not going to find our work. So that's how they would have found you. So you want to be able to share it as well, but obviously certain circumstances mean that they want to keep that privacy, and you just have to try and please everyone, really, don't you? You have to try and find a balance of, is it worth taking that job and not having that marketing material? Yeah.
I mean, I think it's also, I guess, in the sphere of, where was I going? I think what you had said about, it feeling icky. I think, yes, you know, you definitely want couples to have their privacy around their photos. But I do think at the end of the day, like, as photographers are growing, like when we're getting to this place of, I don't know, when you're just starting out, or even when you're in the middle of your career, what starts happening as you become more in demand is essentially you start booking these higher end jobs, right? And when you have a higher end job where they're paying a lot more money, they usually have higher end guests that actually do require like a certain level of privacy around the event, beyond just the desire of, I want my photos offline because we're private people.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, as a photographer, you're like dancing this fine line of respecting people's privacy whilst continuing to be able to grow as a photographer. But I think the ultimate goal, and I know this, like once you get to a certain point, once you're charging a certain amount, it's like, I'm making what I need to make, and I don't need to share these photos because inquiries are coming in because I am who I am. Mm-hmm. And that is a privilege that not many photographers get to.
Yeah.
But I do think if a photographer can make it to that point where people are hiring them for their name as well as their work, then, I mean, like charging a privacy fee, I don't think would be super necessary at that point, because it's like, whatever, like you're still going to book work.
Yeah, agreed. So, I mean, definitely something to consider for newbie photographers for sure. I know, because you see a lot in the forums that they don't really know how to approach this, or they want to see what other photographers are doing, but I don't think there's a one right way to do things. It's just where your own thoughts and opinions on business lie. Yeah. Although, except for when it comes to the UK laws, you have to abide by the UK laws. Be aware of those. Not like me, who's an idiot.
You mentioned earlier on about at the start of your career setting that goal of sort of saving up some money to go full time. Is that something like goal setting? Is that something you do constantly in your business? Are you still setting goals each year to aim towards, whether it's numbers of bookings or whatever?
I would say so. I'm not as like, here's my business plan oriented. I'm kind of like, let me just write this down in a note at the end of the year and like reevaluate, how am I feeling? Am I super stressed out or burnt out at the end of this year?
Mm-hmm.
Was that a large number of jobs? Do I want to be booking here more or booking there more? And then from that reassessment, it is like, okay, well, I want to be charging this much more because being on that many planes was so hardcore. And so it might look like an increase in prices. And when that happens, then it also looks like a reduction in jobs that I'm taking on. At the end of the day, this job is incredibly demanding physically. And I try my best to stay in physical health. Like I exercise, I work out, I do strength training. I have to get massages. I have to see a physical therapist. I'm worried about my wrists getting arthritis because of how heavy these cameras are.
Yeah.
There's a whole slew of wear and tear that happens to our physical bodies that I think makes this job specifically one that also comes with like a shiny price tag, because it's like, you're not just getting wedding photos that are going to be what you remember from this entire day, but you're also like, it's someone's health. Like we have to be there. We have to spend our whole year like being healthy to show up. So it's super high demand and pretty high stress, honestly.
Yeah. I love the fact that you mentioned that, because I know for a fact that so many photographers and filmmakers put their own health on the back burner.
Yeah.
The amount of people who don't do like strength training, for example, because you mentioned it, like I didn't do that for years. I used to go to weddings with a gimbal in my hand, and this was like, it wasn't a mechanical gimbal. It was one of the old fashioned like weights at the bottom, camera weight on top. And I had a huge back injury, and I thought I was going to be crippled for life until I went and did strength training and had to work very hard to get that back. But my God, please listen to Sophie here. Do some strength training, for the love of God, before it's too late.
Yeah, and I mean, in America, like our health insurance is tied to our job. So, like you guys, I mean, I mean, not that the UK's health system is doing much better, but
true.
You guys don't necessarily have to. Your job isn't tied to it. Like you can receive that type of healthcare. In America, it's like that's another thing where wedding photographers, industry professionals, like if we are hurt, we don't really have someone that we can just be like, all right, go shoot this wedding. Like either we're giving that client all their money back or we're finding a replacement, hoping that our client's okay with it. Like I think if you can get to a place where you can take on less work, the better and more balanced and healthier and safer financially, I think people will be. But
I always kind of enjoyed that kind of almost juxtaposition where it's like you go into weddings loving it, but then to be the best, you do like 5 weddings a year. And like if I was to think about doing 5 weddings a year, I would maybe in my mind think I was not doing too well. But that's kind of the goal. So like obviously you raise your prices, you do 5 weddings. I really found that funny because we go, I mean,
but that's the extreme though. Like
that's
the message. Not many photographers are getting to that level of.
True.
I just don't know if you want to be at that level because you're probably rusty every time you go to the job. Like, I feel like there's a good warm up that happens. Like every first wedding of the year, I'm like, okay, I got to go to the street and take some photos so I remember how to use these things.
Yeah.
So, I think there's a good number where you stay like well oiled and continuing.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that because obviously you said you were doing a lot of flights, but how many weddings are comfortable for you and your books? Like, well, what is that kind of magic number that you aim for?
I want it to be like 10 to 12.
Okay.
Right now it's landing at 15. And I think 15 is a good number, but for one person, it's a lot. So that's where I am, but where I want to be, I would say in the next year or two is, I would say max 12 and staying true to that, just because, I mean, I'm gone for weeks at a time, sometimes months at a time. I try not to cross over the ocean more than I need to. I don't want to be like the sole reason for the environment, you know, being mad at me. So
Yeah.
So because I mean, well, let's talk about what you offer, in fact, because obviously people might not know, especially if they're going to thrive, because they might be just starting out, or there might be a few years down the line. But from your point of view, I think it's quite a unique, privileged point of view in the fact that you can do these kind of luxury weddings. Tell people about that experience. What are you offering your clients? How do you approach a wedding day? Like, give us, just ramble at us. Give us all the gossip, all the news.
Don't give me permission to ramble.
You have permission.
Thank you. Oh man. Yeah, I think luxury is such an interesting term, and one that has been shifting a lot in our industry. I think for the longest time it was like Jose Villa, KT Mary, Corbin Gherkin, like a lot of these like really fine art wedding photographers. And for a reason, like they are consistent, they're quality, they are showing up and dressing to the nines. You know what you're going to get with them. And I think that is a luxury service.
Yeah.
I think now that luxury has almost shifted, like there's a certain type of client that is still luxury, but very laid back, but still wants it to be a party, still wants to like, you know, show the messy, and doesn't want like this clean, tidy, picture perfect type of wedding photography.
Yeah.
And so with that comes a shift in expectation on the type of photographer they're bringing on. I am tattooed all over my body, which I used to think would lose me all kinds of jobs. It's like, I'm never going to get into these bigger clients. Like they're going to find out I have a tattoo and they're going to be like, we can't have her on site. But I think whenever you have a voice within your work that really stands out, like that no one else in the industry can really touch, because you have followed what feels good to you, or you've leaned into that, or whatever it is. You finally stepped away from what the industry is doing. I think that is a luxury. I think that is a luxury item that clients want. And not to say my work can't be emulated or found, but I do think when you're able to find your own voice within your work, that's when you can start jumping into the luxury end of things, because it sets you apart. And so whenever I do go into a wedding, now it's like these clients they're being referred to me. I always have a one-on-one call with them, because I'm like, I want to know I'm not working with anyone crazy or super demanding in a way that's just bad for my mental health. I want to make sure I connect with them in a natural and real way, because I'm going to be spending a whole lot of time with them. And if they're not nice people, are their friends going to be that nice? Probably not, you know?
Yeah.
So I always want to talk to them. That's the first part. And then from there, with my weekends, I offer welcome night coverage and wedding day coverage. I don't typically do single day weddings anymore, because I do think it's really important for guests to be exposed to your primary photographer before the actual day begins. And when I started implementing that, I started noticing that on the wedding day, I was able to get a lot closer. And like the conversations I was having with guests were just an extension from the night before, or they just felt a lot more comfortable asking me questions or being around me. And then I think I also started noticing that a part of this job is how we present ourselves, how we speak, how we demand a certain level of like trust and confidence in how we're showing up. Like, I think luxury is showing up and being like, okay, I know where we're taking bridal party photos. I know where we're taking family photos. I know where we're doing couples photos. This is actually the best time for us to be going. You kind of know where to shift things if it needs to happen. I think luxury is showing up before you're even supposed to shoot. So if I have a weekend event where we're shooting Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm showing up on Tuesday because Wednesday I have to scout, or maybe I'm showing up on Monday, depending on if I need to get unjet lagged. So then that Wednesday I'm going to all the places where I need to scout. So what time of the day are we doing family photos? I want to see what the sun is doing then. What time of the day are we doing portraits? I want to see what the sun is doing then. I think being prepared, understanding the logistics of a space, knowing how far it is, knowing how much time you need to get from point A to B, especially on these properties where you have go-karts that need to bring you places, or maybe you need a walkie-talkie because there's no service. Like, the amount of preparation that goes into luxury, I think, is what clients are paying for. Like, I have every battery known to man in my bag. I have multiple backups of every camera. I mean, not the same one, but I typically have 2 medium formats, 2 35 millimeters, and then 2 digitals, and the 2 flashes. I want to make sure if something falls in the pool, like, I have another one to back it up. So, and then I do think that there's also a certain level of attention to their needs, right? Like, when it comes down to curating images for publication or certain requests that they might have in post, there is a certain level of, let me see what I can do for you, or let me see how I can help you, that comes into play. I keep saying, I did this on the last podcast I was in, and then I remember thinking that I needed to stop doing that. Sorry, guys. Sorry.
Saying Oh, don't worry about it. I say all the time.
My mom's going to kill me.
Not at all. You're fine. You're fine.
So with all of that, I think, too, it goes, I mean, luxury, it's what's included. My life. My life is included. My mental space, my weekends. I've been trying to budge off of that, but I've been trying to have better boundaries with myself and my schedule. But I think with ideally with the luxury photographer, you're just getting someone who's showing up and like knowing what they're doing and able to handle every single lighting situation, good or bad, mostly bad sometimes. Knowing how to handle like those small, 15-minute blocks we get to document a room that's 300 feet and massive and holy cow, no light. Yeah, I do a lot of calls with planners beforehand. Usually we're on the phone a few weeks to a month before, just going over timeline and making sure we have everything we need for the job. Touching base with clients is a big part of it. I try not to bug them too much. Oftentimes correspondence is strictly planner, strictly with planners instead of the client. So I mean, I don't know. Yeah, maybe that answers the question.
I like it. By the way, I like a good ramble full of ums. It's my favorite.
Looking at the finding your own voice part of that, like you mentioned how you thought having tattoos might stop you getting certain clients. Like, were you trying to hide them at one part of your career, and if you were, was there like a turning point where you were like, okay, I don't need to hide them, and I can now see my own style and voice and be more confident in following that? Like, was there a turning point or something that changed?
So I think my voice happened before the hiding my tattoos part happened, actually. So I found my voice, but then I remember booking this job with this really big planner. It was Easton Events. And anytime I book a job with the planner, I'm just like, where are they from? What are they going to be like? I always ask around. And I had heard really great things about their team, just them being super on it and being someone I definitely needed to work with and make a good impression with. So I remember looking up and seeing that they're from somewhere like, I think North or South Carolina. And I was like, oh gosh, I'm going to have to wear a turtleneck in the Bahamas. This is going to be terrible, And then I just, I packed my clothes. I packed a few long sleeves just in case, but it was so hot. And then I showed up, and the florist, it was a gay florist covered in tattoos. And then there were so many other vendors that were just heavily tattooed and like were young, and the whole Easton team is so young. And the fact that they brought on all these artists, all these people to create, it just showed me that our younger generation and our industry, like the 30s, 40s, like it's not about what you look like. I mean, maybe to some planners that front facing thing is super important, but honestly, I don't think I want to work with people who place an emphasis on what I look like over what I can do. And I think that as creatives, we get to kind of play that role. We get to show up and be like, oh man, you actually look a little edgy and you're actually really good at what you do. And so now it's like, I think it's okay to fit in to who you are and not really have to worry about what other people think. You don't want to work with people who place an emphasis on your appearance. I mean, don't get me wrong. You do have to like dress nice and like be manicured and have your hair looking okay and be put together. You can't show up to these weddings in a hoodie. But as far as the things you can't change about yourself, like those are things that I would hope people aren't judging us for.
Yeah.
That's
nice and refreshing to hear. I'm not going to lie. It's quite nice. I've got fucking loads of tattoos. And obviously on really awkwardly noticeable places. Like I got one on my hand and he's like, are you sure you want he called it a job wrecker. I'm like, why'd you call it a job wrecker? He's like, you're not going to get employed with a tan tattoo for a normal job. I'm like, oh, right, yeah. It's fine. I'm self-employed. It's all good. It's all good. And it's obviously the hand I hold a camera with. Mm-hmm. So it's a very obvious statement that if you don't accept me, I'm not going to do your wedding. Oh man, fun times. Yeah. So you're not like you mentioned. I mean, this is kind of like an early stage photographer and what they might think the luxury market would be like. But everyone always talks about how you dress at a wedding. Right? So I'll just ask the question: how are you dressing at a wedding for these luxury markets?
I always ask for the dress code, but I didn't start to realize I could have fun with what I was wearing until I worked with Jesse Toombs. Okay. I remember the first job I worked with him. I worked with him. There we go. He was in this beautiful linen outfit with these Gucci loafers. And I was just like, this man looks so good. I want to look this good at my jobs. And so I just started paying attention. I already love clothes. Mm-hmm. And so once my wedding started becoming a little more fashion forward, where my clients were really excited about clothes and fashion, mm-hmm. and I started realizing that some weddings actually have dress codes, I started asking the planners, what's the dress code? And when they tell me, I'm like, okay, cool. Now I can dress to fit in. Because at the end of the day, like, I do have maybe like 3 or 4 cameras on me, but I can at least look good mm-hmm. doing it. And I think whenever you do dress well, it invites even more conversation. Like that's what it's about. You want these guests to feel like you could be hanging out with them. I've gone to a wedding where one of the clients was like, all right, this is what you're wearing. This is what you're wearing. This is what you're wearing. And I was like, how do you know? And there you go. Like you have a new friend, and they trust you because they trust your sense in clothes. And it's silly things like that that builds relationships between two strangers. So it's just another way of getting in there.
Mm-hmm. It is funny, actually, the power of what you wear, funnily enough, at a wedding, because it was only last year. I really like kilts. Like I'll happily wear a casual kilt in my daily life. And for a Scottish person, you save the kilt for special events, right? But I would walk around in a kilt normally. And I remember starting to wear my black kilt at weddings. And we do a lot of American couples coming over to have that kind of destination wedding vibe or elopement. And they would see me and it would open up conversations, and a lot of the time with the mums. Like the mums and the aunties, they were like my best friends at a wedding, and it was so nice. And it was so weird because I'm just like, I've not done anything different except for wearing a kilt and just embracing. Like they want to come over to Scotland and embrace Scotland. So it was just like two people just embracing Scotland was a really nice conversation starter. So I don't know. Like
there's always a few guests who are trying, like wearing a kilt for the first time as well.
Yeah,
and it's a case of you're instantly the one that's like, hey, am I wearing this right? How can I help you? Help me put this on correct. And it just breaks the ice, as you say, and makes you a friend. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yes, yeah. So you know, when you were talking about planners and giving their service, it was kind of like an open flag to be like, I'm going to offer my service to guests and other things, so that. Well, just being helpful is just how I want to live my life in general. But it did mean that when they saw me on the dance floor later on, I could like have a wee dance with them and film them having an actual genuine dance, and they opened up to my presence rather than just turning around and ignoring me. Very hard to shoot a dance floor like that. Anyway,
that is so. You could not be more true with that statement. That is, that's how you know.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your actual photography, because you mentioned the cameras you use, like medium format, 35mm. So you're a film photographer. What drew you to being a film photographer at weddings?
Well, I started shooting film. That was how I got into photography. But when you're 16 and you are playing with a film camera and having to develop it and buy the film itself, you start to realize you probably need to get a job. So I was very lucky. My family gifted me a digital camera the next year, and that's where I kind of drifted a little bit more into that world. But I think it was, how old was I? I think it might have been like 20, maybe 21, where I started shooting film more for fun, because I remember how much I loved it just coming out naturally, like just perfect without me having to spend a bunch of time on my computer. And after having worked at politics and having to edit all the photos, like we just edited them from raw to like how they needed to look for post. And I think doing that every day for 4 years really pushed me into a space of like, I'm going to die regretting how much time I have spent on my computer. And so I think a part of me was kind of becoming burnt out, and I was asking myself, well, how do I fall back in love with this? And I went back to where it started, and it was with film. And so I brought it back into my workflow. I started doing just more personal shoots with it. More editorial type campaigns, and I don't know, things that I was just having fun with. I started bringing it on vacations to photograph my friends and where I was going. And then eventually I was like, well, what if I brought it to a wedding? Like, what would happen? And so I just remember bringing my little like Minolta to a wedding with like a few rolls of black and white film, and I just started integrating it into that and seeing how it worked. And it was a very slow process, because I was still scared to death of film. You know, I was just like, oh, if something happens, it's not going to be good.
Yeah.
So I made sure to get really comfortable with my camera, with my light meter, with, you know, knowing how to work with it on a wedding day and seeing like what moments it could come forward. And then I think after like a few years of doing that, I was shooting more with it. And then I was like, well, what happens if I get another camera that's a little bit faster, you know, like where I don't have to do everything on purpose. So I think I got a Nikon F5 and I started playing with that incredible metering system, even though it's so heavy. Oh my gosh. But that camera just, I mean, I love all the adjustments you can make. And I also love that it's autofocus, and I love that I can rely on it.
Yeah.
It is a monster. I've dropped it so many times.
Was that the last Nikon film camera that came out?
I think they came out with the F6 shortly after.
Right,
and that one is ideally, hopefully my next purchase just for weight purposes. it's a little pricey. So
Is
I'm
it
just like,
even
well, I
now?
have a hard time like getting rid of my F5 when it works, and
I mean,
then
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
but
Oh, it is
yeah,
smaller. Oh, that's so
it's a lot
funny.
smaller. It's a lot
That's
smaller.
crazy. So yeah, so my grandfather had the F5. I remember the 2 grips. I was like, holy shit, this thing's so heavy.
It's so heavy.
And then the F6,
Yeah.
that's where they developed another grip, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I
you can
remember
make the F5 even bigger, or
Yeah.
it's a lot.
Oh man, good times. I remember that camera.
It's a good one. I highly recommend it to everyone I talk to. So, or the F6 if you want to go there, but I haven't shot with that one yet.
But you are so right, by the way. The metering system on it is very good. Like you're not going to think that you're shooting in digital, but it's not too far off in the operation of it, I feel, for that sort of system. When you're used to, like, maybe you dabble in film, you go for, like, I don't know, one of the earlier Canons, like an F3 maybe? Canon F3, is that what you've got? No, I've got that.
The AE. Like
That's right, you've got the AE. One. That's right, I get confused. And that's, like, not great. I mean, it's fine to give you a ballpark, but anyway,
I think the metering systems on these cameras does vary. Like I have the Contax G2 that I used for a little while, but as soon as also like between Leicas, I remember I bought my first Leica a few years ago, and I was just working with it. Apparently when the 2 red triangles come up, it's supposed to be a perfect exposure, but my metering system on that camera had not been serviced. And I just kept shooting with it thinking that was it. And so I was like, man, it's just really not good in daytime, but great with flash. I finally bought a new one because it went out of commission for a little while, had to get it serviced. The new one, I did a test roll through it, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like, that's what it was. Yeah. Because it meters so perfectly. Both those triangles, that's exactly what I need to have the most perfect exposure. And it is a beautiful science, but that's also another tricky thing about film, right? Is that, like, if you're not servicing these meters, if the camera hasn't been serviced, then you're taking a really big chance of working with gear that is not in sync or in tune with, like, the metering it should be in tune with. So that's been a whole fun film process.
I can't even imagine. I'm starting to think, like, all the things that could possibly go wrong with a film camera at a wedding.
Yeah, there's a lot. You can stick your finger through the shutter blades. That's a new one.
Oh my god! Like, is that have you faced many? I don't want to say horror moments, but, like, has there been anything that? Because obviously you've got other bodies that you can fall on, but, like, has there ever been a moment where you've missed something, and you didn't notice at first, or do you not want to? You can say, I don't want to tell you. I don't want to tell you in case my client's here.
I'm thinking of, like, the big, like, oh shit moments I've had with my cameras. One of them was dropping my Contax G2 as I got out of the back of the car onto the ground, and the lens just no longer focusing. Like, it was just, it was done. And I remember we were just starting portraits, and I was like, okay, well, I guess we're not using this camera. But it took me a minute to accept that we're not using this camera, because when that happens, when you have a camera break on you while you're, in a very short time period of getting something done, you have a very small period and you had a vision of how this is going to go. You have to, your ability to mentally adapt to that situation is put front and center. And you have to just be like, okay, I'm switching out of this, I just broke a very expensive camera stage, to I'm gonna be where I am right now, and I have to be present. that was during portraits, so no important moments were missing.
Are you at that point? Are you just like, oh man, these are gonna be amazing. You guys should really buy some albums. These albums are gonna be incredible.
No, I think at that point I'm like, why am I even doing this job? I'm such a fraud. Like, this is terrible. Like, what am I gonna like? I'm like, what am I doing? This sucks.
Yeah.
Like that's the feeling, and it keeps going. As good as you get, you're constantly like, oh God, what am I doing? Like, should people even, sometimes it's like, why are people paying me? But I have also accepted that like these things happen to the best of us. And I think what makes you good is knowing how to handle those situations. And if it's something I need to communicate to a client where, like, I don't know, say all 3 of my cameras break, they're going to know. I'm not going to sit there and pretend to take photos. I'm going to be like, all right, guys, we need to go get a camera that can take some photos. Are you cool with that? And most times they're going to be like, of course. Yeah, that's what we're paying you for. I'm like, okay, cool. Not being afraid to communicate with people is a huge thing. And the other time I had a camera that really we had a hard time. As for family photos, I was putting the roll in the camera, and for some reason, my finger just went through the shutter blades, also a Contax G2. And that was the end of that camera's life for that day and forever. It's still not working in a drawer somewhere. So I think those are the 2 big moments of camera mishaps. For the most part, though, I'm always keeping track of how many shots my cameras have. I'm always keeping track of, like, I don't use the Contax G2 anymore because it has too many knobs where things get changed without my permission. Like, you could be shooting in double exposure all day, or you could switch to, I don't know, single or manual, or the sky is the limits on that camera. And I think that is dangerous whenever you have a camera whose settings can easily be changed. I don't like that.
Yeah.
So most of my cameras are either like fully manual, like my Leica M6. If it's on a setting, it's on a setting because I put it there. My F6 or my F5. Hello, I'm already daydreaming. My F5 is, same thing. Like, it's when it is what it is, it's doing that. And then, same for my digital. So if one of them is like not working or having an attitude, we just go to the other. So I've been very lucky, and I'm knocking on wood. I haven't had to miss a moment because of that. I have had a moment where a client has asked me for a photo amidst like the end of speeches. We have 2 seconds. This isn't a time for photos, but they want a photo with this person. And I'm like, oh God, okay, we're doing this right now. All right, cool. There's no light in here. And I'm definitely have my exposure settings for like the person talking near the light over there. So now I like need to take a photo of you. So I'm going to grab my camera that I think my flash is on, right? I take the photo and the flash doesn't go off. I'm like, oh, that's so weird. Let me take it again. Flash doesn't go off again. And I'm just like, okay, we got it. I don't have time to sit here between this awkward exchange of everyone looking at us and this not working. So I just took a mental note. I let settings go. I let their guests keep talking. And then after the speeches, I found them and I was like, hey, like, let's take that photo again. And so I will do things like that if I know I've messed up. That's how it rolls.
We've spoke to a lot of film photographers on the podcast, and some of them take assistants to change film. Some of them don't. What's your approach on a wedding day? Like, you've obviously got a lot of cameras on the go, and that takes a wee bit of time. You obviously get fast at it when you're doing it so regular as you, but do you take an assistant? How do you do all that logistics on the day?
I think I have had an assistant for some of my really big jobs, and I really don't want to roll up a Holga that many times. I am definitely grabbing an assistant because I'm like, it's not fun, But the way I shoot too, like I usually have my setup is like a spider holster where both of my cameras lock into my hip, which is really nice. And then I have my lightest camera around my neck. And then I also have the think tank pouch on my waist. So I have like my black and white film, I have my color film, and then I have my exposed film all the way to the right, and then a Sharpie in there. So I can just mark them as I'm going. My F6 or my F5.
It's okay. You can dream. This is a podcast full of dreams. You can do it.
I'm dreaming. But my F5, all I have to do is stick it in there, pull it out, and then that sounds terrible. Anyway, I'm putting the roll of film in there, rolling it out, and then it loads it itself, and it's good. It's ready to go. My M6 does take a little bit more time, but I don't mind that time. Like, people don't always want to be photographed.
Yep.
And I'm not loaded like right before they have their first kiss. You know, I'm monitoring how many shots I have left on there, and then I'm going to reload it and maybe give the couple a second to just chill and not be photographed. I am a deep believer in the beauty that the time that film puts into a day, the space. Like, we don't always need to be running around like little chickens with their heads cut off. Like, everyone needs time to breathe, you know, especially our clients, especially ourselves. So I like that film is a natural pause. But yeah, like sometimes if I need a Holga to be, not a Holga, my Hasselblad to be reloaded, like that thing takes doesn't want the film. I don't know. Like, that can be a tough one to load. So depending on the day, depending on the scope of the job, depending on the types of cameras I want to use. Sometimes an assistant is great, but I would say 95% of my jobs, I am not shooting with an assistant at this point. I just think it's so much more work to delegate another person and have them do things. Like, unless it's moving my bag, like I feel like I can do everything else myself and still do a good job.
Yeah. That's slowing down and taking a break thing I resonate with, and I like that point. There was, I think, am I right in saying that you've shot alongside John Dolan at some point?
Yeah, we just had a job in Paris a few months, October. Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember seeing, he posted something, I think it was on stories, and a screenshot of it. It was, the message was something about a photographer should never move faster than a guest on a wedding day.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, that is such a good point. Like, and you said about the running around like headless chickens. I'm like, yeah, why are people getting so stressed and frantic? I get it's because it's an important job that we're doing, but really, you should just be slowing down, enjoying the day as a guest, take it, letting breaks happen naturally. I like that point, and you sort of reiterating it there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think our energy is so potent. Like, I mean, the same way that we are affected by the guests' energy. Like, are they warm? Are they welcoming? Are they, do they just seem like nice people? Are their backs turned to you? Like, all of that is a type of energy that we're experiencing. And so if we're showing up with a frantic energy, with a, need to rush, need to do this, need to do that, like, the best thing we can do on a wedding day is chill out and remember it's not our wedding. Yes. Like, that is what I've told myself from the very beginning. It's not your wedding. So you get to be calm. You get to like bring that calm to everybody else. And I think if photographers can harness that and set their intentions in that way of like serving others and showing up and in a way of being helpful and like how we are around people, that's going to be so well received and appreciated, because our clients might look like they're chilling, but man, all it's going to take is a mom coming in with some type of request and her being like, I can't do this right now. And then it's it all hits the fan,
I love mothers, but it's always the mothers, isn't it? It's always the moms.
It's always the moms. Yeah. I get so many clients or people that are like, so have you had any Bridezilla stories? I'm like, no, but I've had some Momzilla stories. Always.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I always remember that time we were in Italy.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember where it was.
I think it was Orvieto.
Orvieto. Yeah. And the mother of the bride was so manic. She made her daughter cry, like full on tears. And I'm just standing there like a useless man, just like, I have to give people some space right now. Yeah. And I just wanted to pull them away. But yeah, I was just like, yeah, this is a great example of why you don't bring the wrong type of energy into a room.
Yeah.
And you can be the high energy photographer.
Yeah.
You can be outgoing, great. But I think there's probably some balance needed in specific times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sophie, I was just checking your commercial website there. This artwork tab, is this your art?
Yeah.
Is this your art? It's incredible.
Thank you.
What the fuck? That first oil painting, that looks like you've done something and then just scored it with your hand. That I want a print of that so bad. Are these available?
I have it at my house right now, but I haven't made prints of them.
Oh my god, that's so good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really. Are you a Star Trek fan?
My dad is.
Okay.
When Leonard Nimoy passed away, I did a portrait of him.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's one of my favorite portraits, I'd say.
Yeah, it's so interesting because your gallery, I mean, there's not too many pieces here, but they're all so different, which is interesting because usually you find an artist and they are like, they have a vision and they implement it into a specific format, or the artists that I know, I suppose. But here you've got oil paintings, you've got your what looks like charcoal,
Yeah, charcoal.
Pencil stuff. It looks like. I mean, you're all over the place, and your subject matter changes as well. And I just really enjoy it. But that oil piece. If I was to request one thing, if I could dream of my F6, it would to get a print of that oil painting, because I just love it. I think it's great. So
Thank you so much. I can see what I can do.
please, I'll love you forever.
Should we talk about some photographs? Or should we talk about Thrive first?
What
order?
We don't have a lot. We still got time. I do want to talk about this jack of all trades. What does that mean to you in the industry?
Well, I didn't start using that term until I was described as it.
Oh,
like,
okay.
What does that mean? I was like, what is a jack of all trades? Because I had a planner be like, yeah, it's great because you can do it all. And I was like, oh, I've never really thought about it that way. But when I started doing more mentorships and people were like, well, how are you working with planners? All I could give back to them was like what planners had given to me, right? Mm-hmm. And so I started diving a little bit more into it, and I started thinking more about what makes a gallery stand out. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes in our industry, people can be boxed into these categories. Like either you're a documentary photography or an editorial photographer, or you're a traditional photographer, and there's no space for being anything else. But I think a really good photographer, like I think some of the top photographers we're looking at in the industry, are able to shoot, for the most part, like every aspect of the day in a way that like their style doesn't inform, I guess, how they're approaching it. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, when I shoot documentary and candid types of work, I really like framing it, and I like the layering to happen, and I like it to feel a little messy and maybe not perfect. And that's beautiful in itself. But am I going to approach decor that way? Absolutely not. Like the listeners are going to come back and be like, were you on drugs when you took these? So when I approach decor, I do approach it with the hat of a decor photographer, or not decor, but a commercial photographer, a product photographer. I remember being in the studio, I was always at eye level with the shoes I was photographing. I was always at eye level with my subject, and the lines were so important to me. And for like composition, lighting with product photography, you really have to be mindful of your aperture settings. Mm-hmm. You can't just willy-nilly bring it down to 1.8 and expect that to be okay. Yeah. And so I think understanding the different concepts behind why we make the choices we make when it comes to certain times of the day. I do treat getting ready a little bit more documentary, but when we start getting the bride or groom or whoever it is that's getting dressed, that then becomes a little more editorial, because now I'm saying, okay, well, I kind of want you to rotate this way because our light source is coming from here.
Yeah.
I want to guide them into the best light for these photos, because we're only going to have one opportunity to get you dressed, right? We're not going to have you continuing to take on and off your dress. That's crazy.
That is crazy.
It's
That
the craziest
is
thing that happens.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that. And then I think when it comes down to family photos, like that's just like we are feeling the energy they're giving. We're trying to get everyone to also have a good time, but also relax and also love each other, because obviously, like, you do, but now the industry has told you to be a certain way. So now we have to deconstruct that. And how well we can do that depends on how well we're connecting, right? So there's so many, then that's like when you're a people person. You're no longer a photographer for family photos. You are a people person.
Yeah.
And whether you're having a good day or a bad day, or maybe they're feeding you sass, so you're giving it right back, like, who knows how that's going to go.
Yeah.
Like, family photos are rogue for me sometimes. It's just like, whoa. But that's also a place where we can receive the most trust from guests. I can't tell you how many times I've done family photos, and after that, people are like, man, you really know what you're doing, or wow, you've done this before. And I'm just like, you're right, I have. So stop asking what you do with your hands, I'll tell you. So that's like my favorite.
Yeah.
And then I think when it comes to reception, like, that's one of the most, for me, it's one of the most enjoyable parts of the evening, because now we get to like play with all of the tools, right? We get to bring out our flash, we get to play with ambient, we get to play with a slow shutter, we get to play with available light and tempo, and depending on what I once had a job at where were we? It was this crazy venue in San Francisco. I think it was, what are their names? Oh no, I forget. It wasn't, they were the Doses and Mimosas. Who did that song? Who were those people?
Mimosas. I don't know.
I forget the name of the musician, but they were performing, and the lighting in this space was the craziest thing I had ever experienced. It was going from like totally white to dark to strobe to like red, and like it was just changing all the time.
Is it Cherub?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
I think that was the guy. Maybe. That doesn't sound right.
Guy with a baseball cap and glasses.
Oh, who knows? It's not.
Yeah.
All I know is that the job was crazy. The light was crazy. And I was using all the pre-customized settings on my camera to be able to shoot that environment. And I think like those are the places where a lot of people are like, oh, I'm not techie. But I'm like, if you're shooting weddings, you really should be. Because so much of this job is knowing what to do with light. And if you know how to handle your camera, like in the most extreme and frequently changing of situations, then you're going to be good. And you're going to have versatility within your options of how you create an image. So when I say jack of all trades, I think that's like what I'm leaning into is how are you approaching every part of the day, and how are you adapting to meet it?
Yeah. With so much versatility in the way we have to shoot, how do people maintain a like cohesive gallery or cohesive portfolio? Like, do you have any practical tips for that?
I mean, I'm so bad at this. I mean,
or do you not think that matters? Like, is it good to have that versatility on display?
It's going to be consistent because it's coming from you, first of all. Like, I think that's the bottom rule. But how we approach editing, how we approach curation, I think curation is probably one of the most under-considered parts of the job at this point. Like, I know some people send their photos, their galleries off to get culled by someone else. And I'm just like, what are you doing? That is your voice that you're sending off to be chosen by someone else.
Are you telling me you don't use any AI in your culling?
No, not. I don't. I have.
Mind blowing.
I have been told by people that it's helpful for eyeballs, but that is like, I love how, I love being techie, but not when it comes to software. I do not like updating to new technologies. Like, I know that Imagen thing came out, but I can't do it. I haven't been able to do it. It doesn't work. It works for some people, but definitely not for me.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think as far as a consistent gallery goes, I think being intentional, first of all, is really important. With all of my galleries, I always curate a highlights tab. And that highlights tab it's almost like a condensed full gallery. So it's like the atmospheric shots. Then it leans into, how the day is beginning, but not too much. Like, you have one photo of each thing. Like, we're not trying to overdo this. It's like the best of the best, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then it expands on. You have some decor, you have some ceremony, you've got the reception decor, you've got candids of cocktail, you have reception, flash, ambient, etc. I think when I'm going through a final gallery after everything has been put in there and I'm like, oh, this photo is really standing out, or this one looks absolutely crazy. Typically, before I get to that point of gallery cohesion, I'm already in Lightroom looking at all of the images through that. There's like a gallery view option. And so you can just see all of them tiled out. And that helps me know which parts of the gallery to revisit, because maybe like the coloring is feeling a little bit off or too warm or too cool compared to the other photos that are next to it. So I think before we even get to bringing it into the full gallery, we should be paying attention to those things. And then whenever we get into the full gallery, then like curation continues. Like, is this image supporting the rest? Do I have multiple? And this is finally me deciding which one's the best. I think a lot of photographers get really lazy when it comes to gallery delivery, because they're just like ready to get it out. And I get it.
Yeah.
But that's the part that matters the most. Like, spend a week with it while it's uploaded and like go back and visit it. And if you don't know which picture to choose from, like, give it a second. You don't need to decide. And if you're like, man, they're both awesome, just leave it, then just leave it. But delivering like 5 or 6 photos of the same thing, like, we really need to stop doing that, because it's exhausting. And that is one thing where planners will look over you. And it also takes away from your voice. Like, if you're not being decisive around this is the better photo, then like it's almost like clients trust photographers less who deliver more. So the more curated you can be, the more you're going to have a voice and the more trust you're going to gain with planners and clients.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of leads me on to the next question, which was like, can you share too much before it hurts your brand? Like, where is that line? Do you know?
I don't know. It's like, I think there's such a thing as sharing too much, for sure. Like, when it comes to like social channels and just like sharing like not really quality content, but just sharing it to be prevalent. I think my space is like, I just want to share the stuff that I love, because that's what I want to book. I want to book clients who love it too, because if they love what I love, then chances are they're going to ask me to do more of that,
Yeah.
I do think I one of the mentorships I recently had, and this is why it was something where I was like, man, maybe I should bring this to Thrive, because I thought it could actually, she was like, we need something helpful for these people. And I was like, okay, let me think of what I can share. And I recently had a few mentorships, but one of them, we always look through their portfolio. I always want to see like a few of their galleries and like see what they're doing, especially when they're like, how are you working with planners? And I'm like, well, okay, I can share that, but what are you doing? Like, I didn't know what you're up to. So I'll look through a few of their full galleries, and oftentimes I'm seeing that their highlights are just really unconsidered, like not spending a lot of time there or potentially non-existent at all. And what I mean by unconsidered is like they're putting all of the events happening because they feel like they need to include it in that. And it's like, if you had a shit welcome night where everyone's just in the pitch black and you had to direct flash everybody, like take it out. Like, don't show that in the highlights. Like, don't share that with planners. Like, show the parts of the day that really highlight like how well you did and how well you can do. They're going to get to that part eventually, but it doesn't need to be the first thing that they see.
Yeah.
And so what I started doing was going through their highlight tabs with them and their full galleries with them and being like, okay, you have like 7 of these photos, like which this one's better objectively than that one. And like, if we're talking about things like decor, or it's like, why did you give this photo? Her eyes are halfway closed. This is an unflattering photo of this person. Like that level of straightforward conversation, I don't think really happens that much in this industry because we're always so afraid of hurting other people's feelings. But if you want to know what it's going to take to book more, sometimes it's like looking at your own work and being a little bit more discerning around what it is you're delivering. And so a big part of what I want to talk about with people is like, okay, you want planners to work with you? Well, like, what are they taking in within like the first 30 seconds of jumping into a gallery of yours? Like, because that's how they make a decision. That's how fast they make a decision. Are they seeing decor? Are you not shooting decor because you don't think it's important, or maybe you think it's a weak point of yours? If the answer is yes, then you need to work on decor. You need to start shooting more of that if your goal is to work with planners. If your intention is just photographing beautiful couples and you're going to go on to be the next John Dolan, like by all means, keep going. But not everybody is going to be a John Dolan in this industry. Like, he is a legend. He is so well connected in New York. Like, he can just show up and do what he wants to do. And that is the beauty of it. But for us to think that we can approach a job like that and continue to book work is so misleading for a lot of people that are just at the very minimum trying to make a living in this field.
Yeah. So is that what your day 2 sessions are going to look like? Is it going to be portfolio reviews, or are you doing shoots?
I was honestly, I really pushed for just doing portfolio reviews because I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on here because I'm very against styled shoots. I haven't done them in my career except for that one I did with Candace, and that was like a planner relationship situation, and I don't regret it. But I have never paid to go and I should be saying this maybe. I haven't in my career. I haven't paid to go and be a part of a portfolio builder in that way, and I personally don't think that type of stuff is what's going to make a difference. Planners don't want to see photos that they see in every other photographer's portfolio. They don't want to see a couple. They're not interested in that. They're interested in decor. They're interested in what they're going to get from this. And so that's if a photographer's point or what am I trying to say? That's if their intention is to work with the planner, right? But if your intention is to grow in a space of like, oh, I want to see how you're posing couples, I want to see how you're working with them and going from candid to artistic, then yes, I do think watching a more seasoned professional engage with the client can be very helpful. That's how I learned. I didn't do a styled shoot, but second shooting, like whenever I watched Kristen Marie Parker, like work with her clients and pose her couples and work with families, just watching her, I remember receiving so much validation and some of the things I was doing, and also education around, hey, it's okay for you to take a break and move this family to a totally different spot because the sun just changed and that's not going to be a good photo. In a way, I do see the benefits of it. So for day 2, we are going to do, I think, a 45-minute session with a couple where I am going to show them how I pose them, how I engage with them, because I think that's it. Like, engagement is the most important thing, right? Yeah. How I work in a more editorial-ish way with couples, like just how like into the details we get in posing them. And then it being very candid, like how do we switch between the two? So I think that'll be good. Also working in an urban environment, like that's always a challenge. Holy cow. Like well, we got a bus, we got a cone, we got this and that. Like it's going to be, I think it's going to be real. Yeah. And I think that's the type of experience that is useful, which is why I was like, okay, Lisa, I will do it. No problem. But then after that, I was like, but can you let us talk about galleries? Like, can we go through a few people's galleries, like the brave few who are open to having that type of critique? Because in art school, like your work gets talked about in front of the entire class, and that's how you grow. And so I do think it's an important dialogue to invite and encourage within our industry for the people who are willing to receive that type of feedback. So we'll have those.
I'm excited because that person or those people could be listening to this podcast, and right now they don't know it's them. It could be you, listener, who's about to be absolutely taken apart and hopefully put together
in a constructive way.
In a nice way. I'm sure Sophie. Sophie will be nice to you. She'll be nice.
Yeah, nice I'm always nice about it, but it's always like, let's look. I think when we're going through photos, we're looking at it as like, okay, these lines are crooked. These lines aren't straight. This could be a better photo if you just lower your perspective a little bit. Like, while I can't be one-on-one with people showing them how I shoot decor, I can at least I'm showing them how I shoot people. But when it comes to like the other parts of the day where maybe they're not super excited about it or interested in it, and they don't see it as being important, like, I can at least go through a portfolio and be like, well, like, why are we delivering this versus this? So I think it could be hopefully helpful.
Yes, exciting.
I did want to add though, because with that mentor that I had done where we were going through her gallery, she reached out to me a few months later to let me know that her booking follow through had increased tremendously. And when she reached back out to me with that, I was like, okay, because it was something she could just implement the next week, like just going through her galleries, creating a highlights tab, really curating what she was sharing. And like, next thing you know, one of her jobs was in Vogue like a few months later. I mean, I think she had already gotten that publication, but that is a great way to be ready, because once stuff like that starts to happen, you want to make sure you are ready for the opportunities that follow. So I was like, okay, maybe this is something we should talk about. And it's a little controversial because, weddings are about people, but I'm willing to go there.
Oh, that's it. But I'm quite excited about this because one, I have the safety of being a videographer, so I don't have the same emphasis on things. But in my head, I am like, and I've said this on the podcast a few things, I'm like anti things at a wedding. So I'm going to be listening to you with full focus on what you are saying. Every single word I'm going to be absolutely paying attention to, because maybe I need to change.
I mean, I think video, unfortunately, video is a tough world to be in.
Why'd you say that?
Because it's like anytime something gets featured or something, like they never want to share the video, right? Like, you guys miss a lot of major marketing opportunities because it's like a medium that just takes a lot more time and attention to put together. And I feel like it's a tough job. I would not want to be a videographer. I will say that much. Like
me neither. So me neither. I don't want to be doing this. No, I'm kidding. I love video, but it is.
You're absolutely right about the features though, because we used to, at the very early days, we'd maybe get featured every so often, and we'd maybe chase that because it was the way to market back in the day. But then we noticed that it was like, oh, that's a great film. Have you got the photos? Can you get the photographer on board as well?
Yeah.
And the photographer would maybe just never deliver those photos, and that feature would just die because the film didn't have those stills of the details that the blog wanted to share.
Yeah.
And it was always like, so we just gave up on blog features. We were like, not worth it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah.
Maybe we need to like do some sort of thing where we just here's some detailed because can't step on the photographer's toes. That would be rude.
No, I don't think you guys. I mean, that's the tough thing about video. It's like we get to monetize on certain parts of a day. Like if we can show up and provide that product, then you're going to get referred. You guys just have to be awesome people and like show up and not go missing.
Yes, exactly. I will say actually, who is that? We were doing a video workshop one time, and there was this. I think his name was Sebastian. He worked a lot of that again, the luxury like Lake Como type of weddings, and he would do trailers or films, and they would essentially be just beautiful shots, and it would only feature the suppliers. And instantly I was like, no, it doesn't feel right for me. But then his work was taken quite far.
Yeah.
Like it had that kind of like, oh, this is who made this wedding. It's like a wedding that was made by these things instead of, anyway, it was a very different approach.
Yeah.
That was years ago. I must remember the name of that guy.
Was he hired by the planner? Because I know some planners bring on their own like video photo teams just to document their stuff.
You know what? I'm not sure on whatever wedding he was doing that for, but I know he did that for a lot, so I'm assuming not.
Yeah,
but I could be wrong. Anyway, let's go to show and tell, shall we? Show and tell. So I've picked a few of your images now because you're going to be talking a lot on curation. I think there was a folder that you sent us over. I kept my selection of images to those very specific ones that you'd sent over because I didn't want to go too rogue. So I've selected a handful from. Yeah, so it's I've played it relatively safe, but at the same time, like none of your images were boring in any way. I loved nearly every single image that you make. And they're on so many different levels. So first of all, you can see the TV, okay?
I can.
Okay, cool. So this first one, I really loved. Almost for the same reason as I was talking to you earlier about being on the dance floor and having people open up to you. Mm-hmm. And I just felt this image was so like there's this guy in the background. It looks like he's part of the band. But he's singing to a crowd over here, but you've got this guy with the flash on the right, and I don't know what he's doing, but he's got a cigarette behind his ear, and it's just this kind of like someone's focusing. It's just for such a simple composition, there's quite a lot happening in it, and I just kind of wanted to hear what the story was behind this image, and why you selected it in that folder.
This image is a total happenstance, lucky moment. I think the lighting is what makes this image so great because it was just constantly moving. Like the light was not the same in there. And so for the dance or for the singer to be lit the way that he is lit was just pure luck.
Okay.
My intention mostly was just photographing this guy that's walking out of dance party for a second. And we just I was like, oh, hey. And he was like, hey. And so, we took the photo and that was, and he kept going and I just kept going in. So it was like this exchange of like him leaving the dance floor and me entering the dance floor.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think whenever I saw it developed, I think I just sat with it for like 10 minutes because it's perfectly exposed in all the ways, just with like the background, the foreground, the attention to detail, everything.
So this isn't Flash.
This is Flash.
Oh, this is Flash. Okay.
When you look at it, like it does make you stop. Like a lot of these images that we always talk about is to make you stop scrolling or something. And it's like you almost think, is that like a collage or something? Like the lighting's so unique that you're like, what's going on?
Yeah, you're right. It is quite interesting because I'm assuming, I mean, the direction of the light makes me think that it's one flash that's going off here. But he just looks so well lit. And the guy in the background, who doesn't seem that far away, is kind of like, feels quite in the distance. He doesn't have that kind of direct flash that's going on. But he is in the flashlight because you can see the shadow on the hand. So I'm just like, I don't know. And it might just be the guy's skin color as well, because that also contributes to this, because he's wearing a white shirt. He's got very, as I would say, Scottish skin. I'm sure he's not Scottish, but he's got very pale British skin. And this guy in the background seems to be Indian. Yeah. I'm not entirely sure, but that kind of like brown, kind of pale brown complexion.
I think the lighting, we had a few different lighting sources happening. Like the stage had its like crazy bright white light that we're seeing off in the distance. And then we have like this ambient orange light that it was changing from blue to orange to red. And it was still powerful enough. Like I didn't really need to be using my flash in this space unless I was really going for a certain look. But using my flash in tandem with the light that was going on and having an ISO high enough to take in that ambient light, right? Yeah. So almost always shooting with an 800 ISO when I'm using flash. I think those elements just really made for this being well balanced as far as lighting goes, and like allowing the background to retain the atmosphere while allowing for the subject matter to just come into his own space and his own world. So I think that is, for this image, like what's so interesting about it, just lighting wise. Because like there's really not a lot happening here, but at the same time, like there's so much going on.
There's also little details that are kind of like, you can look at them, like the small detail of the cigarette, which I missed until it was on the big screen. The singer is sweating down his face. Like there's just so many little moments that are like, you can almost like taste the image, like you know that you know it's going to be kind of moist. A moisture. Anyway, I really like this image. A big face. Sorry, Greg, you're so close to it. I love this photograph. I'm a big fan of black and white. This just feels so like almost like a street photographer. You know, like pop a flash, and it's kind of rolling off his face into the darkness. It's very similar actually in terms of like where the light's coming from. It seems like it's coming from the side again. Kind of a very similar effect actually now that I've got it here. But just the framing, the fact that she's doing her lipstick in the background, the other person, you can only see like half of her face. I don't know. There's something really authentic about this image. So yeah, tell me about this. What's your, why did you like it, and why did you take it?
Well, I was saying goodbye to the parents. This was like my goodbye rounds. I always go tell parents and people I've spent time connecting with goodbye. But this dad, he just been talking to me all day about this egret photo in his bathroom that he took compared to like a painting that his wife really wanted to be up, and he was just talking, like that was our conversation throughout the day. And so I just really connected with him and enjoyed talking to him, and thought it was so sweet that he wanted to talk to me about this bathroom discussion that him and his wife had been going through. And, I went up and I think he was again talking about the painting, and I was like, well, I'm heading out, but I told as he was talking, I was like, okay, I'm going to take a photo of you, but I'd like for you to keep talking. And he'd had enough drinks to where he was like, yeah, of course. And so he just like kept talking to me. And I just got my settings right. I got my flash where I want it to be. I put my aperture to what it needed to be this close.
Yeah.
I think it was like 16 for this shot.
I was going to say it's quite. You must have been quite close because although it's at 16, you not like there is still a bit of depth to it.
Yeah.
Like you can still see the people in the background quite clearly. I mean, they're a wee bit soft, but yeah, it's well balanced in terms of that kind of stuff. But yeah, I really like this.
Yeah. Also, you guys, I do have a client call in like 13-ish minutes. I know this should be a part of. I know.
All right,
I can
cool.
either.
All right, cool. I'll tell you what. We'll do one more image, and then I'll just wrap up, and then I will send you off. Okay? Does that sound good to you?
We're good. You're good.
All right, cool. Okay. Well, why did I like this picture? Oh, yeah. Again, it's that kind of side-on flash. Well, actually, I just made the assumption it was flash just because how bright it was, but actually, no. I still reckon this is flash. Is it? Oh, I don't know. The thing I liked about it is it's quite abstract in the same almost way that your oil painting is. It's kind of, there's that kind of messy texture around it. There's that with this. There's a lot of texture because you've used that slow shutter drag, and that's quite nice to me. Plus I liked white, black, that line as well, and the focus on just, I mean, you've almost overexposed this dress with how powerful that light is. So is this a flash?
No, this is a street light.
Holy shit, that street light is blasting. My God.
Yeah,
Okay. So I was wondering, because there is a lot going on past the couple here. There's a whole band coming their way. So just tell me the story behind this.
Yeah, this is a New Orleans second line, and this is often what they look like. Sometimes the couple's closer to the band, sometimes they're further back. But it was such a fun wedding, and I think sometimes couples don't always interact with the second line. Like they're just dancing to the music instead of like turning and facing them. But these guys are New Orleans locals, so they know the drill. You know, like you're supposed to engage with the entirety of the second line, but they just happened to be far enough forward where they were in the street light, and I was like, this is the time, because we're about to go back into the dark and I'm going to have to shoot it with flash. So I think that's a part of just the versatility of shooting in a dark place. Like New Orleans taught me so much about light. And so shooting a second line, you start to learn that you're going to get these opportunities to shoot an ambient as well. You just have to have your cameras ready for them. So most of the time they're shot with flash because it's just pitch black outside. But yeah, that was just such a fun result. And that was the first wedding I shot after doing John Dolan's workshop in New York. So I was very loose for it. I was just like, hey, here we go. We're leaning into not caring, and I'm taking photos I've never taken before. So
that's amazing. Again, another great image. Right, let's quickly wrap up.
Where can people find you online?
Wait, what?
Where can people find you online if they want to check out more of your work before coming to Thrive?
I know.
Yes. Okay. My Instagram is Berard Weddings. That's a good place to go. My website is being reworked right now, but sberard.com is also a great place to just go and check it out. It's a very terrible Squarespace job that I've done, which is why we have another professional doing a real website. So yeah.
A real website. That's hilarious. Awesome. Instagram and all that kind of stuff. Are you on Instagram? You are on Instagram.
Yeah, that was the first thing she said.
Oh, right. Okay. Oh, sorry. Oh, I missed that completely. What an idiot. Sorry. That's why I do video, because I'm an idiot. Anyway, we'll let you go. Thank you for this amazing conversation. We can't wait to meet you at Thrive. People can find us. People can find us at perspectivebycinemate.com, or Instagram at perspectivebycinemate. I hope you're ready for Thrive in Edinburgh. If not, you should get ready for the 2-day All-Star Photography Conference, taught by 6 phenomenal mentors on the 4th and 5th of March at the Hotel Imagine X. Subscribe and follow wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you in the next one. However,
In the meantime,
enjoy your thrive.